Welcome everyone to the Hurting Humanity channel. I have to keep everybody posted on this quote unquote once in a lifetime storm because most of you know over the years I've been talking about Florida specifically being a honeypot. I've warned about people going to Florida, and yes, Florida gets hit with hurricanes, but nothing like what we're potentially about to see, where a storm is literally going in a direction that we've never seen before, directly through a state where it looks like obviously we have a designated target. And the target is the entire state of Florida. And some of the stuff that's out there right now, the propaganda from the mainstream media, is blowing my mind. Hearing them openly talk about HAARP and have them openly talk about weather modification is a bit shocking. But what's even more insane about all of this is once again how they're politicizing this. They're talking about how conservatives have a conspiracy theory that the government is trying to wipe out Florida so that people in Florida are unable to vote because it's such an important state in the upcoming election. And it's utter insane. It is beyond insane to me at this point that we have human beings, flesh and blood, who live among us, who care so much about a fake election that they don't care about their fellow human beings whose lives are being upended, destroyed. There are stories of children floating down the roads in North Carolina during Helene. And people's main concern is of an election that doesn't even count. You think when the government is killing you with weather that they're going to let you dictate via a vote who's going to be the sitting president of the United States of America? Are you joking with me? Now, the other thing I need to cover in regards to what they're saying could potentially be a Category 6 hurricane. And I get it. Sometimes they make the storms out to be bigger than they are. But let's be realistic about it. We know that there are plans to put certain states completely underwater. There are plans to completely devastate a lot of states. We've seen a lot of predictive programming. So obviously until it hits, all it is speculation. But it does not look good. And I have to show you two of the things that are trending because it's important to pay attention to what's trending, what they allow to trend, and what people are actually talking about. And Category 6 is trending along with Aurora. And you might say, Aurora? Why is Aurora trending? Because once again, we've seen the northern lights in America. They're saying the geomagnetic storm is from a solar flare like they do every time. And I've mentioned over and over and over again how people become desensitized to this stuff. All of a sudden, everybody out there thinks that it's normal to see northern lights every single month. Everybody's just like, oh yeah, the northern lights are here. You know, we just have a shift in the Earth's poles, and they just get this scientific answer that they don't understand. So they just kind of brush it off and say, well, this is the new normal now, that we're going to see northern lights all the time. And what people out there don't realize is when they're talking about HAARP, they should be talking about the northern lights because the experiments that HAARP runs simulates artificial auroras in the sky. And a lot of the times when we see these artificial auroras in the sky, shortly thereafter, there is some type of catastrophic storm that comes. Now, not every single time, because we've seen over the last couple of months these auroras popping up, and we haven't seen massive storms, but we've certainly seen a pattern of bizarre behavior when it comes to seeing northern lights popping up all around the earth. Last night, they're reporting that the northern lights were in Minnesota. Okay, these are the northern lights that you're only supposed to see in Alaska. They're in Minnesota. They're across pretty much the northern U.S., and also visible in the UK. So does that sound normal to anybody out there? So if you understand that what they're doing at HAARP, right, openly, this isn't some conspiracy. HAARP has admitted that they're running experiments that will cause artificial auroras. So the question is why? Are they creating artificial auroras because they have huge plans for an event at Disney World? They have huge plans for the Super Bowl. They're going to create it in the sky. Is this what they're doing it for? They're doing it because they're able to simulate artificial auroras that will cause catastrophic weather events by manipulating the frequencies and the geomagnetic field in the sky. Look, they have articles out. Why scientists use these radio transmitters to create artificial auroras. So this tells us when we see these articles out there that the government has to put an excuse out there for you to believe as to why these scientists are doing something like this. Now, these are all stories that came out before the Northern Lights became the new norm around the earth. And again, when people become desensitized, they just see these things and they go, whatever, I've seen it already, it's not a big deal. 1 year ago, if I told you that the Northern Lights could now be visible in New York City, your head may have exploded, or you at least would have been like, wow, that's freakish, that's weird, that must be a once-in-a-lifetime event. Well, now it's a month-in-a-lifetime event, or a weekly event, seeing the Northern Lights. And some of the other stuff that's out there in regards to HAARP shows us where this narrative is headed. This is going to be a highly censored topic. Weather modification and weather control, which I've covered a lot over the last couple of years. Most of you who are listeners to my channel have heard me talk about it over and over and over again. And I've talked about it over and over and over again because this was a part of Agenda 2030, the carbon footprint and convincing people of all this stuff that's supposedly happening because of carbon emissions was part of the goal. This is the new norm that they're creating through weather modification, making you think that it's because of you and me and how we live. So we start changing how we live. In other words, we start living like prisoners. And now they're going to start rolling out propaganda like this. Don't forget that when the outbreak hit in 2020, in the beginning, we were all able to talk about the outbreak. We were all discussing it. We were talking about black goo. We were talking about what needs to be done as far as their plans go, how important it was to get this inside people's bodies, the digital ID. These are all things we were allowed to talk about at first. And then we suddenly saw a wave where everybody was wiped off the internet. In fact, I even showed you some of the videos where if you wanted to talk about any of these topics and you got a strike, you would have to complete a quiz on platforms like YouTube that talked about those towers going up and microchips. Pretty incredible, the admission of guilt by Google themselves. But now we're going to start seeing this. So mass bird migration during Hurricane Helene triggers blue radar blooms. No evidence of weather modification by HAARP or NEXRAD. Then there's this other story, CNN, the mainstream media is pumping out Hurricane Milton debunking online conspiracy theories as the storm looms. Why are these stories coming out? Because they're politicizing it. And that's what's so important psychologically for what they're trying to do. They cannot have civilians banding together, realizing that this technology is real. And that's the first thing that should go off in somebody's head. A light bulb should go off and they should say, wait a minute, they do have the ability to manipulate the weather? I mean, I've shown clip after clip after clip. I can't tell you how many times I've shown proof of the fact that they can do this, and you've all seen it before. And everybody out there with common sense knows that they can. You can look up Operation Popeye. You can look up just the patents that our government has, the thousands of patents when it comes to weather modification and geoengineering, and everybody out there that still thinks it's water vapor in the sky. I mean, what are you even bothering living for at this point? If your brain actually thinks that it's water vapor, do you know how stupid you actually are? Do you know how useless you actually are as a human being to even pretend like you have independent thoughts, like you understand what's going on? If you think it's water vapor, you're better off having a lobotomy. Or in fact, you probably already had a lobotomy and don't even realize it yet, which is what we're living among. So now we're seeing them politicizing this. They're literally talking about theories that the government created Helene and the government's creating Milton because they don't want voters in Florida and in North Carolina to be able to get to the ballots to vote, right? Remember that quote from Hillary Clinton about an October surprise that I discussed? Right? Well, this might be what they were referencing in regards to creating some type of, oh my goodness, because they'll come out on TV and they'll start saying stuff. Can you believe these people? They think that we're controlling the weather. They're going to start using talking points like that. Oh, can you believe these people, like a pizza parlor, basement? Now they think that we can manipulate the weather when they can manipulate the weather. And politicians should be talking about this, and it just shows you how compromised both sides are because they will not bring attention to the patents that the government has for weather modification. They will not bring attention to geoengineering. They just won't, and the alt-right media won't either, because it's imperative for them to keep you stuck in thinking that your vote counts and that you could change all of this with a vote instead of a revolution. That's what they fear. They fear the civilians bonding together, looking at each other and going, hey, you know what? Florida, North Carolina, these might be conservative states, but that doesn't mean that everybody who lives in these states are conservatives, because they're not. Most states, it's like 55-45, 60-40, okay? But they want people out there to look at this as if it's political. They want Dems to look at this and smile. And psychotically enough, some of them are. Some of them are looking at this and going, they're getting what they deserve. They're all bigots. They're all Christians. They're all hateful, horrible people who fled down to Florida because they took the government bait to go down to Florida, where Ron DeSantis was going to let them live freely and baited everybody. Remember all the stuff about going to Florida I covered? They were literally telling people, hey, if you move down to Florida, you can't be censored online. I remember hearing that. Hey, because people were messaging me like, why don't you go down to Florida? And then you won't have to worry about, getting censored on YouTube. I mean, and people took the bait. They took the bait. And this is what I warned about. And it's only going to get worse. It's only going to get worse. But now you're going to see the hijacking of this, because when the government hijacks these stories and they start talking to you about weather modification, they're going to make it so ridiculous that people out there actually dismiss the whole notion without even realizing that the government's admitting that they can modify the weather. That's what this is going to turn into. They're going to go, oh yeah, we're doing this with the weather. Come on now, and they'll probably even say stuff like, yeah, we did try stuff during monsoons, creating monsoons during Vietnam. And yes, John F. Kennedy did mention weather modification, but we're not using it on our own civilians. I mean, don't you trust us, right? Now, how anybody out there on either side can trust these people is beyond me. Because again, Democrats think that Donald Trump's the worst thing that's ever lived. And that's fine, because they're working together. They're all the worst thing that's ever lived. The problem is that people won't come out of it. So they're like, well, the government's murdering us with weather. We're seeing aurora simulations in the sky. There's all this weird stuff going on. But our vote's actually going to count on November 5th. That's how hellbent they are in preventing us from voting. I mean, what planet do you have to live on to think that they're doing all of this stuff and then they're going to let you dictate who the president is? I mean, you would think the 2 fake assassination attempts on Trump would have been enough for conservatives to go, you know what? These stories seem a little suspicious. I mean, they missed him twice, right? They not only missed him twice, I mean, all the stuff that I covered at the time with his ear healing miraculously, how they would never miss in the first place, the DARPA magic bullet that they would have used to make sure they took him out, how they could have taken him out in the night. They could take him out any time they want. They could take him out like Princess Diana. There's so many things that they could do, right? These people refuse to remove themselves from the left, right. And they're in such a hypnosis, just like the Democrats, that they literally think the government's doing this so that they don't end up voting. The government's doing this because their plan is to kill conservative Christians. Their plan is to put most of America underwater. And that includes Democrats as well. But as long as everybody out there is fighting among each other, as long as Democrats and conservatives are down each other's throats, well, then the government's going to get away with this. That's how it's going to work, right? Instead of people going, you know what? Let's just brainstorm here. Our vote clearly doesn't count. Our government's gone completely rogue, and all they want us to do is fight among each other. What could have occurred in the last couple of years that would give them the ability to steer these storms more than we've ever, this is unbelievable what we're seeing. Well, we would probably look around at those towers and we'd say to ourselves, who gave them the authority to put those towers up? Oh, so Verizon went to some of these farmers and paid them off to put the towers there. Well, then I guess some of these farmers and some of these homes who have 5G towers on them are liable for putting us in harm's way. Because we're not just talking about weather modification, we're talking about radiation poisoning and cancer, that they're putting these towers up. So then we start saying to ourselves, well, we're going to go to these places and we're going to tell the people who have them on their property very nicely for 5 minutes that they need to remove them. Okay? And if they refuse to remove them, well, then we're going to have to possibly take them to court or something else, because these towers are part of the problem. And they want you to just continually focus on people who vote differently, who look differently, people who are manufactured by the government to look a certain way and act a certain way while they're murdering people. And there's people out there that are laughing at all this stuff. They're like, oh, I'm glad I'm not in a state like Florida. Oh, yeah? Well, guess what? It could come to your state. It doesn't need to come off the coast anymore. Tornadoes are popping up all over. They're even releasing movies like Twisters, so they could hold a middle finger up to your face and say, guess what's coming next? Because that is what's coming next. Tornadoes appearing in mountains, in terrain that they're not supposed to appear in. Storms like this popping up a week after Helene. A week after Helene. And you don't think that there's something to it? Well, of course, I know everybody who listens to my channel thinks there's something to it. But how about the sheeple out there that literally refuse to believe that the government's doing this. And some of them out there hearing this stuff and they're laughing and they're going, well, even if they are, screw them in Florida. They're all conservatives. Screw them in North Carolina. That's how psychotic and sick they are. So we had the Northern Lights pop up. Again, this is something that's been occurring over and over where they're just trying to dismiss it and go, well, the Northern Lights are appearing again. Let us tell you why, right? Everybody out there who's been paying attention knows that HAARP has been running experiments causing artificial auroras. They never give you a reason as to why they're causing artificial auroras. And if they do give you a reason, it's not one that makes any sense. It's the same thing we hear at CERN, right? Oh, we're trying to create a black hole. And you just go, what? You're trying to create a what? Why? Well, we want to explore particles. Well, who gave you the authority to do this? This doesn't sound safe, and this doesn't sound necessary. And it doesn't sound like when you're telling us that, you know, we're having an energy crisis around the earth. You're telling people that they need to ration how much electricity they use, that you're doing nonsense like this, on top of the fact that we all know that it's some type of demonic garbage going on, because who in the world would try to create a black hole and shoot that much energy into the atmosphere? Oh, you know, you don't understand what we're... No, we do understand. We do fully understand. And that's why you silence all of us, because you're fearful of the fact that people out there are waking up, that they're not intimidated, that they're not listening to your crap and then taking it and going, well, maybe I don't understand. No, we do understand. And you're creating artificial auroras. Why? Oh, because it looks pretty? Is that why? Did you want to put a light show on for the people in Minnesota? Is that why for Governor Walz? Or did you want to put it up in, in Alaska because you're just checking it out to see if you can make it green in the sky? They're doing it because this is a form of weather modification that they're using. And that's why we're seeing these northern lights popping up all around us, because they're running experiments all around us. And they don't just need HAARP anymore. So we all need to get past this mindset that this is all happening in Alaska, because they're clearly doing this from a lot of military bases around the earth. And I believe fully that they're steering these things with those gigantic towers that don't make your phone go faster. So this is just, pray for people affected by this. I mean, a lot of people are going to be affected. And I know a lot of the times we can look at these things and we can go, oh, they're over-exaggerating this, they're over-exaggerating that. The fact that the government is now hijacking the narrative of HAARP and trying to tell everybody out there that there's conspiracies that, oh, the government's going after conservative states because they don't want them to vote. People need to get out of that now. Now, your vote means nothing. All it means is your consent for them to continue to do these things. And if you continue to think that your vote counts, a revolution continues to be prevented from actually occurring. Democrats and Republicans should be banding together. They should be saying, why do I feel like this every day? Why do I feel so much anxiety? Why do I feel so depressed? Why do I get so angry at people who have the opposite political... I mean, I don't want to feel like this anymore. Well, when you start thinking about it, you start saying, wait a minute, they're the ones who are doing this. They're the ones every day telling me that all these people that they're stereotyping are bad, conservatives are bad, Democrats are crazy, and they go back and forth. And then they push stuff that nobody even asked for. Right? You think about some of the extreme stuff that they've been pushing over the last 10 years or so, not even 5 years, right? How about the story time in the library? Okay? We all know Democrats. Does anybody know anyone who was asking for that? No, you don't. But they put it on the news, and they put a few actors on the news who tell you that this is the way the world should be, and everybody gets gaslit into being angry. Meanwhile, most Democrats go, yeah, I don't really know what that's about. I don't really support that. I don't even get what's happening here. But they want you to just believe that every Democrat's on board with that, and every conservative is a white trash hick who's a gun-carrying member of the NRA. This is what the government is creating, and it's keeping us divided. And the government has the ability to do this with weather, and they're going to do it to Dems and conservatives, because guess what? Right now, there's Dems and conservatives in every state. Last I checked, even though these states might vote a certain way, okay, a lot of people look at some of these states and they go, how is that even a Democratic state, right? You think of the people who live there, or you might know people who live there, and you go, yeah, I mean, there's no way that it's a fully Democrat state or a fully Republican state, right? Everybody out there needs to pull themselves out of this. They have this trending deliberately. They have Aurora trending with category 6. And they're already dismissing any of the stuff that people are seeing in the sky because they don't want you to connect the dots. They want you to just look at this and say, oh my gosh, kind of like the pizza parlor thing. Now crazy conservatives think that they're creating weather because they don't want Republicans to make it to the ballot box on November 5th. And that's what their grand scheme plan is. How about we talk about the fact that the government has admitted that they can manipulate and control the weather? Let's talk about that. And if they have the ability to do this, why would this be out of the realm of possibility? Have they shown you that they care about you? Have they shown anybody out there that they're here for us? They just locked us down for 4 years. They just attempted to poison everyone. I mean, what have they shown you that makes you trust them? And why is it that these communist Democrats are so defensive of their party and these conservatives are so defensive of Donald Trump? How about we're defensive of the human race and we have psychopaths crazier than anybody we've ever heard about in human history, okay? Because to use weather like this and then see videos of bodies floating down roads of children and then to politicize it is absolutely sickening. You can think about what we've been told about all these people, Hitlers and Stalins, nothing compares to this. And you can think about all the psychopathic killers who were government agents anyway, who were Manchurian candidates from the government like Dahmer. And you could sit there and you could say, yeah, that's one of the sickest things I've ever heard. Oh yeah? How about somebody having the ability to manipulate weather instead of using it to end droughts and to steer storms offshore, they're steering it to direct targets, to murder and kill. Doesn't get much more sick or psychotic than that. Pray for everybody out there who is affected by this. Hopefully people are able to get out of wherever they are in Florida, and hopefully God intervenes and it's not as bad as everybody thinks. I know everybody out there, they get on me. They're like, this is God's wrath. This is God's wrath. You're allowed to have whatever opinion you want. I've been studying weather modification and weather control for a long period of time. The government has the ability to do it. Whether you want to believe it or not is up to you. God is ultimately in control. I believe that 100%. But to sit here and deny that the government can't actually do these things, you're just kidding yourself. You're just scared to face the reality that they can and they have. Go through all the patents. Go through all the things that they've used and done with weather modification. Go back and look at things like Katrina. You think those were natural? Give me an utter break. Pray for everybody affected. Pray that God intervenes. I thank everybody for being here. I hope you're all doing well. God bless all of you, as always, and your families.